My name is Frances Haugen. I used to work at Facebook and joined the company because I believe Facebook has the potential to bring out the best in us.
It's the 8th of November 2021, and we're in a room at the European Parliament in Brussels. MEPs are listening to Frances Haugen, a former employee of the social media company Facebook, now known as Meta.
But I am here today because I believe that Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, weaken our democracy, and much more. The company's leadership knows ways to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but they won't make the necessary changes because they have put their immense profits before people.
After 2 years spent working at Facebook, Frances Haugen leaked the company's documents, showing that Facebook was aware of the harm it was causing to its users, but decided to prioritize its profit instead. For instance, the documents revealed that Facebook knew Instagram was worsening body image issues among teenagers, but downplayed the problem to the public. Facebook denied many of the accusations made by Haugen. However, the Wall Street Journal investigation based on the document she leaked made international headlines and led Haugen to meet with lawmakers and journalists from around the world.
Dear members of Parliament, there is a lot at stake here. You have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create new rules for our online world. If Facebook is allowed to continue to operate in darkness, we will only see escalating tragedies as a result. I came forward at great personal risk because I believe we still have time to act, but we must act now.
Frances Haugen's story resembles that of Christopher Wiley, the whistleblower who exposed the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which we covered in episode 69. They both exposed social media's problematic behaviours and sparked discussion on what platforms can and should do to protect users' digital rights. But what are these rights, and how vulnerable are we all online? Welcome to Euronews Tech Talks, the podcast that explores the digital, technological, and scientific landscape shaping Europe. I'm your host, James Thomas. This is the third of 3 episodes on social media. After exploring the alternatives to mainstream platforms and the debate on a social media ban for teenagers, we now dive into the world of digital rights through your questions. How does moderation work? What is GDPR? What can social media platforms do to make users safer? We'll answer these questions and more with 2 experts in the field, one with a legal background and the other with a sociological background. So, if you're ready, grab yourself a cup of tea and let's begin.
I'm Gloria González Fuster. I'm a research professor at the VUB, the Vrije Universiteit of Brussels, and I'm doing research on digitalisation and a Europe of rights and freedoms, which means everything that is connected to the digital, our rights and our freedoms.
My name is Silvia Semenzin. I'm a researcher at the AI Forensics and adjunct professor at the Open University of Barcelona.
To start with, we asked Gloria González Fuster a very basic but quite essential question. What are we talking about when we talk about digital rights? Are they human rights or are they something else?
Digital rights is an informal term that we use to refer to rights that we have when we are online. And some of these rights are traditional human rights. When I say traditional human rights, it means rights that we all have because we are human. So we universally recognize those rights to everyone. And this can be the right to freedom of expression, the right to private life, the right to non-discrimination. Now, there are some rights that sometimes people refer to them with special names, and then it's not very clear if they correspond to traditional rights. Maybe somehow like the right to disconnect, you can say it's a new digital right. Is this part of the right to respect for private life? Maybe we need some new rights and then we can create them as digital rights. But otherwise, in general, yes, they are human rights, rights that we should all have.
Let's leave aside the still-to-be-defined right to disconnect. If we look at the majority of digital rights, they are indeed human rights, rights that people have both offline and online. However, just like in any offline space, there are certain people who are more vulnerable and more prone to violations of their rights when online. And Fabio wants to know who these people are. So let's have a listen to Silvia Semenzin.
Digital platforms are not separated from the rest of society and the rest of the world. So the same categories that are vulnerable also offline are the most vulnerable also online and on social media platforms. The peculiarity of social media platform is that they have the capacity to broaden and widen certain discrimination and certain abuse. At the top of the discrimination online, we find women, but then they are followed by LGBTQ+ community, migrants, and people who are discriminated for their ethnicity, religion, and so on and so forth. So again, it is a reproduction of what we already have, but with some peculiarities.
We tend to separate what is real from what is online, as if the digital world were not part of our reality. But actually, what is virtual is concrete, and sometimes, as Semenzin reminds us, it even intensifies discriminatory and abusive dynamics that we see in offline settings. It doesn't take too much effort to spot these patterns. Sometimes they're so large that they make headlines, like the Italian Facebook group of 32,000 members Mia Moglie, where men spent 6 years spreading intimate pictures of their wives without consent. At other times, they're more subtle forms of discrimination, such as the erasure of certain minority groups from someone's feed. And the data speaks for itself. According to a report published by UNESCO in 2023, 58% of young women and girls globally had experienced online harassment on social media platforms. On this topic, Francesca asked in what ways algorithms can amplify these discriminations.
Algorithms decide whose voices are more visible, whose story receive more attention, who gets to talk and who gets to be censored. And again, they have this capacity of codifying this kind of behavior and metrics through which social behaviors are also judged online. So again, this can happen through algorithms of social media platforms that prioritize, for instance, misogynistic discourse and content creators that can also share this kind of perspectives, whereas at the same time, they tend to censor or ban sex-positive discourses, feminist discourses, all those discourses that are not considered as normative.
Be careful though, even if you're not part of one of the most vulnerable groups, it doesn't mean that you're safe on social media platforms. On the contrary, big tech holds a lot of data on you as well, and this can put you at risk. But to reduce this risk, there are actions that platforms, governments, and users can and sometimes should take. On that note, our listener Ines wants to know how moderation works on major social media platforms.
This is a question that I'm not sure I can fully respond because only digital platforms have this information. They are the only ones who knows actually how this moderation looks like in practice. We know that moderation on social media platforms takes shape in the form of a mix between human and automated moderation. So there is interaction between algorithms and human decision. And especially very large online platforms now are forced by the DSA, the Digital Service Act, to have a minimum number of moderators and implement more human moderation. But again, the actual numbers are those that platforms declare with their transparency reports. And we don't know exactly how also these moderators, both human and automated, are trained to make decisions. These rules are decided unilaterally by digital platforms, and it's very difficult to appeal to some of these decisions, even when they concern, for example, violent behavior or, again, violent discourses. So the real answer is that we would need much more transparency regarding these processes to make sure they do not discriminate ultimately those who already suffer of this discrimination.
The Digital Services Act is one of the European Union's landmark regulations when it comes to online safety. Having fully entered into force in 2024, it aims to prevent illegal and harmful digital activities. To improve moderation and safety online, the DSA requires each country to designate entities responsible for detecting potentially illegal content. These entities are known as trusted flaggers, and although they can't remove content themselves, they can directly notify providers of online platforms. Another key EU regulation aimed at making social media safer is the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. On this topic, a Reddit user asked what GDPR is and how it applies to social media companies. Let's listen to the answer by Gloria González Fuster.
GDPR, it's a regulation that applies in general whenever somebody processes personal data about somebody. So when somebody decides to use data about people, they have to respect this GDPR. And this GDPR is basically about three things. It says most of the time you can process personal data, but you have to follow a series of rules as the person responsible. You have to give some rights to the data subject, that is the person whose data is being processed. And then there will be a data protection authority that monitors that everything is going well and that people comply with the law. This is what the GDPR is about. For me, it's important to highlight that the GDPR didn't fall from the sky. We have this GDPR because we have in Europe a fundamental right to data protection that is about giving obligations to whoever will process personal data.
GDPR can be and is used to hold big tech accountable for its actions. But, as the Reddit user wonders, do these companies actually face any consequences?
There is a lot of litigation ongoing against the big players online. And for many years, we have been waiting to see if they will face indeed big consequences. They have sometimes been sanctioned. They are often contesting the sanctions that are being imposed. We have been applying the GDPR now for some years. We have been told for a long time, wait, it will work eventually, but it is taking quite a lot of time to see a direct impact. What's interesting perhaps to know is that the GDPR is being changed as we speak. So there is here in Brussels some pressure. There's a discussion to change some of the rules of the GDPR. So perhaps when we were about to actually see the consequences of the GDPR, the pressure has been too strong, and then some big players are also pushing to have changes in the legislation so they could potentially continue to operate in the way they do.
The AI Act, which entered into force in 2024, has already modified some parts of the GDPR. However, additional changes are being considered with the Digital Omnibus, a set of measures currently being discussed in Brussels to streamline AI rules.
Many of these changes are about the advent of AI, with this idea that we all want to use AI, we want to embrace AI, and then perhaps we should close an eye on data protection. That is the message that we are receiving. And that, I think, it's a bit a wrong approach, because I think because we all want to use AI, we have to be especially careful and be more careful than ever with what we do with personal data.
GDPR, the DSA, the EU AI Act. All these acronyms can indeed sound a little confusing and complicated to understand. But among other things, they set, or at least try to set, the boundaries of what social media platforms and users can and can't do in the EU. And no, it's not only about bans and prohibitions, they also give digital users important rights.
We will have the right to ask to social media companies, what information do you have about me? What do you think I am? You can ask them to give you all the data that they have about you. If they have inferred something about you, they should tell you what they have inferred. And then you can discover if, according to them, you're interested in green socks, in football, in cinema, in a political party that maybe you've never heard about this political party, but somehow they infer you were interested in that. And it is this use of algorithms that they do daily that can put potentially everybody in a vulnerable position.
Of course, having access to this data isn't easy, but you might be surprised by what you can get out of it. In 2017, the French journalist Judith Duportail published an investigation in The Guardian about Tinder, the famous dating app. It was entitled, "I Asked Tinder for My Data. It sent me 800 pages of my deepest, darkest secrets." Duportail discovered that the platform kept everything: conversations, photos, and she started wondering what would happen if the data were hacked, stolen, or made public. Who prepared this 800-page file? Who read it? She started asking more questions to get to know her ELO number, a ranking system once used by the app to estimate the desirability and attractiveness of a user. In 2019, she published the book L'amour sous l'algorithme, Love Under the Algorithm in English, tracing the almost impossible journey she took to collect information from the dating platform. We know it might feel a bit hopeless to finish our journey like this, talking about the lack of transparency in social media platforms. So, to give you some hope, we'd like to share 2 final remarks from our guests. They aren't answers to your questions, but they came up during our conversation, and they give a more constructive view of the topic. This is Gloria González Fuster.
It should not be for normal people to be defending themselves continuously online. No, it's good that we have digital rights that we can use, but we cannot expect everybody to be continuously checking if these big companies are complying. In terms of litigation and how to improve the situation as such, in data protection, the most important development is actually litigation by NGOs. So some NGOs that are more aware of what is happening, that they know how to litigate, they can represent data subjects, and now there is a new directive that actually also facilitates the formulation of collective complaints. So you can, together with other people, say we have a problem, and other users can join this, and they can also collectively claim for compensation from the companies. There was a question before, do they ever face any consequences if you complain and in the end they have to pay you 100 euros because something went wrong? It's not going to kill them in a way, but if 1 million users complain and they have to pay 100 euros, but maybe they will think twice. And this is where the hope is now, that this kind of collective claims could perhaps make a change.
And this is Silvia Semenzin.
I think we should ask ourselves how to create systems that we can, as citizens, control and get accountable and get transparency. And we can also ask for making decisions about it. Our voice is heard, because the problem here is that we have no power on this system. So my tip would be, first of all, take the power out of the hands of digital platform owners and transfer it to society to make sure these platforms are not impacting democracy so severely as they are doing nowadays.
We've once again reached the end of our podcast episode. Thanks to our 2 guests and to everyone who shared their questions with us. As you might have noticed, we couldn't feature them all, but we hope you still enjoyed the episode. If you want to reach out to us for any reason, please note that our email is in the description. If you're keen to learn more about social media, have a listen to episodes 69 and 70. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a special episode on Ocean Day. See you soon. I'm your host, James Thomas. This series was created by Marta Rodriguez Martinez. This episode was written and produced by Alice Carnevali. The theme music is by Leo Lebrun. Sound editing and sound mixing is by Joanne Breton. Our editor-in-chief is Niaz Samadizada. If you aren't already, you can listen to this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider leaving us a positive review and, of course, sharing it. Thanks for listening.